Trump's visits to the sites of the mass killings in Ohio and Texas today were disrupted by hundreds of protesters demanding action on gun control and white supremacy and calling out what they see as hypocrisy from the president.
His actions that he has taken with regard to migrants have hurt our community, and this is not the right time for him to come.
We have a president right now who traffics in this hatred, who incites this violence.
Critics are seizing on language the El Paso suspect used in an online manifesto that was similar to some of Trump's, particularly the reference to a, quote, Hispanic invasion of Texas after statements like these from the president.
People hate the word invasion, but that's what it is. It's an invasion of drugs and criminals and people.
Shooter's manifesto was posted to a website called 8chan just a few minutes before the attack at an El Paso Walmart. The website, which refers to itself as the darkest reaches of the internet, was also used by the mass shooters behind attacks on 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, and a San Diego area synagogue. 8chan is now essentially offline after several tech support companies terminated their services for the site, and the platform's owner is being called to appear before Congress as lawmakers try to get a handle on how to rein hate speech online in. But in a free country with the First Amendment, how much can and how much should government really do? Joining me to discuss are Harvey Silverglate. Harvey's a civil liberties attorney and a GBH contributor. Hello there, Harvey. Michael Curry is former president of the Boston NAACP. He's now chair of the National NAACP Advocacy and Policy Committee. Hello to you, Michael.
Hello.
Nadeem Mazen is a former Cambridge City councilor and the founder of Fabric, which is a new social networking site focused on protecting user data, privacy, and choice. We could use some of that. Good to see you, Nadeem.
Thanks.
I ordinarily ask the first question, but at a May 10th hearing in Congress of some Homeland Security officials, a Republican representative from Alabama did it for me. Here he is.
Do you have any recommendations for what can be done to address the viral hate speech and incitement of violence found on fringe sites like 8chan and Gab? And that's for any of you. Y'all don't have any suggestions for us? That's scary.
I hope you do better. Let me repeat his question. Do you have any recommendations for what can be done about viral hate speech on fringe sites like 8chan? Do you?
Well, today Cloudflare pulled support for 8chan, which frankly should have happened a long time ago. And when a site like that doesn't have caching or have protection against DDoS attacks, it doesn't do well.
Yeah, but that was a decision by an individual who just happened to do what you consider to be the right thing.
Oh, I think a lot of our leverage here is going to be commercial leverage, and that's either driven by consumers or it's driven by business entities. And in both cases, frankly, I think neither the media nor the consumers nor the business entities have been responsible enough yet.
How about you?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, we've seen this across the country with a lot of the hate speech is that we go after the people who fund these organizations, fund these online entities. And we say, we will not give you our dollars, and we won't support the businesses that support you. It's effective. I think you will often find that dollars drive a lot of decisions, and we'll have to use that to stop this sort of speech being spread.
And neither of you want to see any government involvement in this, is that right?
Yeah, I think,
well, we'll get to somebody who I'm sure won't, but I'm asking
I would
first.
I'd say there's limitations on what the government can do.
What are those limitations, and what can it do?
Of course, the protections of the First Amendment. People are allowed to say what they want to say within certain limitations. And I think the examples always are yelling fire in a movie theater. But the reality is we can use other mechanisms to stop this, and I think we're in that direction now.
Is there any role for government, Harvey, to play here or no?
No. And
why?
I think because the problem is that we need to hear more of this, not less of it.
Why?
We have to make it easier because we have to know who the haters are, who the dangerous ones are, where they're coming from, and what they're planning. And the best source of that information is to listen to them and give them platforms. We can't take away their platforms. We want to make it easier for them to identify themselves. Why isn't that obvious?
Well, maybe it's not obvious to a lot of people, including the Supreme Court maybe 50 years ago. Didn't they say that when you're inciting imminent violence and you're attempting to, and it's likely to happen, that is a place where the First Amendment ends and government can step in?
But that test is a very immediate one. These people are in the stage in which they're talking, and you want to listen to them. The Supreme Court talked about somebody standing in the middle of a street corner yelling, "Let's get so-and-so," that is an incitement to imminent
His street
violence.
corner was 8chan. And you don't think the violence he perpetrated almost immediately after was all part of the same thing? I'm not saying these ideas don't work, but don't you think that threshold criterion was satisfied in this case? This is the street corner
I don't.
in
I think
2019.
we have to listen more carefully and more broadly to the haters. We have to know exactly who they are and where they're coming from, and they self-identify if we allow them to.
Well, this is anonymous in most cases, but do we have to listen to the haters?
And I just disagree with that. I often reminded of Toni Morrison's quote when she was giving a Nobel Prize lecture on weaponizing racism. She said, oppressive, and you could say hateful language does more than produce violence or represent violence. It is violence. And the reality is we don't need to hear more of this. I know that there's a consciousness raising that comes from knowing what's out here. But it's traumatic. Not only is it traumatic for the listeners, if you're Jewish, if you're African American, if you're a person of color, that are the targets of these things, but then it also does create an environment where people, whether it's mental illness or whether it's hate, are driven by that, and they commit these sort of
But how
mass
about
crimes.
Harvey's argument that we benefit? These aren't his exact words, but I'll interpret them in my way, and he can disagree. We benefit from hearing this speech. We get to know it. We hopefully get to be able to identify it and the source. So isn't there some benefit from that?
I think that's an academic...
It's not going to disappear if it doesn't have a forum.
That is something, either an academic or an activist conversation we tend to have is like, I want to know, right? I want to hear it and see it so I know what to do with it, how to deal with it. But you can't say that if you're my 15-year-old son, right? Or you're my grandmother and she's having to hear this stuff. There's a trauma that comes from it, too, that we don't necessarily need to promote it in order to raise that consciousness. We can make people aware that there is this kind of hatred in the country and really attack it.
Do we benefit from hearing more of it?
I don't know that we do. It is traumatic and it is infectious. And so I think to the extent that folks like this have a vested interest in promoting it for political ends or financial ends or whoever else is promoting this stuff, I'm sure Putin is psyched to see chaos in the West when stuff like this happens, right, and puts money behind it. We know that about counterintelligence from foreign intelligence. So I don't think that we benefit when this stuff proliferates. On the other hand, it means that we now have to work extra hard to have law enforcement and to have our own volunteer brigades, for lack of a better term, clapping back against stuff like this, which is extremely harmful.
When you say clapping back, what is it? I mean, Joe Biden today was in Iowa, and he gave a speech connected, as I did at the top, making a connection between this so-called manifesto and some of the words of Donald Trump. Here is Biden earlier today.
How far is it from Trump saying this is an invasion to the shooter in El Paso declaring, quote, "This attack is a response to Hispanic invasion of Texas"? It's both clear language and in code. This president has fanned the flames of white supremacy in this nation.
We hear a lot, you know, the way to counter hate speech is with honest. And does something like that help counter something as vile as what this guy posted?
But Jim, it's so important that the president actually feels that he can actually be himself and speak what's on his mind. We haven't had many presidents that you could actually listen to them and know what's on their mind, rather than what some PR person wrote for them.
So we're celebrating this?
Well, we're benefiting from it. That's not the same as saying we're celebrating, but we're benefiting from hearing what the commander-in-chief really thinks.
Let's hear from Nadeem.
This isn't what's on the president's mind. The president is a shrewd operator who's told what to say before he goes on stage, to fan the flames, to get the most visceral, surface-level, knee-jerk reaction from people who are frustrated economically, and transmit that into the most base, coarse, random, violent language possible. And if we want to clap back, so to speak, we have to both come with economic boycotts and participation. We have to come with better journalism rather than flitting about from topic to topic and leaving this one 48 hours from now. And we have to come back, frankly, with more organized participation, which the violent right has, and we have not participated.
You're nodding in agreement with him or him?
I am nodding in agreement with him, and I'm concerned that we think that the honesty that we're hearing from Donald Trump is a healthy thing. When we get under the hood and start looking at El Paso and Dayton and California and those shootings at the festival, and we have a conversation what drove people to do these things, if the tipping point was this president and his rhetoric, that what does it say to those families that lost their family members, those lives that were lost, that we're accepting a president that speaks this way, that incites people to do this kind of violence,
Harvey,
even if it's a contributing factor?
Harvey, I know you don't want government intervention, but these guys were talking about economic power to help crush this kind of thing. You don't even support that, do you? Your position is let it flourish because we will benefit from it, yes?
If people want to boycott it, they have a perfect right. That's also protected by the First Amendment. What I don't want is any kind of government regulation of hate speech, because that shuts down the information that we need to know where the hate's coming from.
We got to end there. We will continue this beyond 48 hours, I promise you.
Thanks,
Dean,
Jim.
it's good to see you, Michael. Thanks.
Always.
Harvey, as always. Really appreciate your time.